Hey, and welcome to the second episode in my ongoing series where I explore interesting, unique, and fascinating video game spaces that I've enjoyed over the years and that have stuck with me well beyond the time that I've played the game. In this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask Clocktown. Not the game itself, just Clocktown. Clocktown is the central hub area for Majora's Mask. It's got a lot of shops, central characters exist here, and a lot of the early game is spent exploring it. Because of Majora's Mask's central time gimmick, wherein the game advances through 3 days, this area undergoes a lot of changes as these days pass. Characters move and change their behaviours based on the player's actions. Not just that, each of the days has their own unique vibe and plays deeper into creating the sense of dread and horror that's playing out above the town folks' heads. I wanted to go through the 3 days and explain why I love this space so much and why I feel, even all these years later, Clocktown remains one of my favourite video game spaces out of any video game. One of the things that I really like about Clocktown is that even when you're first introduced here, there's a sort of hustle and bustle to the town that really gives it an energy. There's a lot of work being done here to build this tower, there's a dog running around, and if you're paying close attention, you'll see this character here walking up to the post box and delivering something before heading back and being very sneaky about it. This is one of the things that I genuinely appreciate about Majora's Mask, because instead of being told, oh, you should pay attention to this person, it's just kind of playing out in real time, and that's one of the advantages to having the time mechanic as it is. Everything in the game is set to a time, and things play out naturally depending on how you interact with the world. And because we're right at the start of a cycle here, this is always going to happen. And if you sort of follow this character and you just sort of see what they're doing, you'll see that they end up running into this door over there. We can't access that door. We won't be able to access that door unless we do specific things in our adventure. But we can hit this bell here. And again, this is one of those little things that the game never really kind of instructs you to do, but you can use it to get them to pop out and come and say hi if you really want to. Well, they don't say hi, they actually run away when they see you coming. But one of the things that Majora's Mask does really well is that you can talk to all the NPCs, and on the first day here, there's a general sense of excitement in the town. Most of the people here are either performers for the upcoming carnival, workers who are building the stages for the upcoming carnival, or it's just general townsfolk who are getting on with their daily cycles. But above everyone's head is the ever-presence of the moon, and as the days pass, that will get bigger and bigger, and its threat will become more looming over the proceedings in the game. But as we kind of explore here, it just kind of feels really fun to sort of wander around, see people doing what they do, and yes, in other games, you get towns like this with NPCs with more people in them, but a lot of these characters end up having quite a bit of personality injected because of the things that they say and the fact that they change what they say depending on the time that you speak to them. So for example, these two here, you can see them here, but you'll also see them in the Stockpot Inn later on if you end up wandering in at the right time. Speaking of the Stockpot Inn, let's have a quick wander into here. You can see that there is the troop leader over here. Now, you can see he's kind of rude to us, kind of nasty, and the thing is, he is kind of unremarkable, but again, this game injects a lot of personality into certain NPCs, and you can see here, this person is just wandering around, stuck in their own thoughts. But as the day kind of plays out, characters don't stay static. Well, some of them stay fairly static, but other ones are a bit more dynamic. If we wait here just a few moments, we will see that that leader is actually going to head out. So one of the things with Majora's Mask is that it really makes Clocktown feel like it's alive, because people are doing things, they're behaving in certain ways, and you can see here that if you choose to follow certain characters, you can see what they're up to. It's not like they just disappear and then reappear. Some characters do that in Majora's Mask, but it's just nice to have a space in a video game that plays out in this sort of way, because if you really want to see how an event plays out, there's probably a good chance that you'll be able to see some form of it through this sort of storytelling. It's very clever storytelling, in particular for the time that this was set. And if we follow him into the mayor's residence here, we can even see him sort of setting up for his meeting. He talks to the receptionist here, and it's kind of like he's in a good mood, he's feeling really cheery. And then you get to see him wander into his meeting, and you even get to sort of stand in the room and watch that meeting play out. How many video games can you say where this kind of detail, you're never told about this kind of event, it just kind of happens? But what you'll see here is a sort of linchpin moment in the game, because you find out not only has there been a big accident in the Great Bay, which obviously you'll be having to help out with later on, but you also find out that he has basically had all of his plans scrapped through no fault of his own. And it really does kind of help to layer in personality with all of these characters, because the mayor's wife here comes off as a bit kind of cold and a bit sort of stern in expressing, you know, this news to him, and he sort of comes off as a slightly more sympathetic character. It just gives these sort of otherwise background NPC characters a bit more, you know, bite to them, which you didn't really get in Ocarina of Time. But then you head next door to the mayor's office, and you're greeted with this really intense music, and you can see that all is not well in the town. People are aware that the moon is coming, and there's a real conflict going on in the background. Everyone's trying to argue about whether the carnival should go on, or whether everyone should be told to evacuate immediately, and you can kind of see the mayor in the middle trying to play devil's advocate to both sides. Again though, this is something that the player stumbles upon. The player is never forced to come into this room to experience this, but seeing this gives a lot more context to what's going on in the overall game, because it makes you aware that yes, people are aware that something bad is probably going to happen to this town, and the conflicts that are raised up from that. Again, it just adds depth to these background characters that otherwise you probably wouldn't even pay that much attention to, let's be honest. But when the meeting's over, you can see the group leader here heading to the milk bar to drown their sorrows, and it's the fact that you can see them moving from space to space, and that they don't just appear in these areas, they actually sort of stroll here. You can, if you look at their faces, they'll be expressing emotions, and it's the little touches that make this game feel so much richer for the detail that's been put in here. You can even talk to the bar owner here, who is basically telling you that you can hang out until the bar's about to open, and then he's going to kick you out. But you can kind of sense that his conflict is not the fact that the moon's going to crash into the town. He's just upset that, you know, he's not going to be able to pay his performers because the performance has been cancelled. Depending on when you enter buildings, you'll see characters sort of doing their own things. For example, Anju here, she has been off to have her lunch break and also to deliver lunch to her granny in that room there. But the thing is, again, these are little details that don't really need to sort of be put into the game, but they're here because they make everything feel more coherent, because characters are doing things with their time. And if you sort of are paying attention, you get little character moments like this. Moments where the postman is delivering the letter that we saw being sneakily delivered earlier on. So we are watching this story unfold, much like with the group leader, across multiple sorts of sequences. And again, we could have come in here afterwards, we could have shown up later on, and we would have been given the quest to come into the Stockpot Inn at night without seeing this. But seeing this gives us that sort of extra detail and shows us how Anju here came to sort of come into the information. And another thing you can do here is that you can book yourself into the hotel. Once she's received that news, she kind of gets a bit flustered and she kind of mistakes you for a Goron. And what's really sad / funny is that later on you can see that Goron sleeping outside the Stockpot Inn, because obviously they have nowhere else to go. It's pretty sad, I'm not gonna lie, but it's also pretty funny. But once again, you can follow the postman back to the post office, and once he's back in there, you can actually talk to him, you can play a game with him. It becomes a whole thing where you can see how these characters' days are unfolding, and because this is kind of like a Groundhog Day, you can learn their routines and you can intercept them at moments where they can do particularly nice things for you and to help you move forward in the game. Once you do a bit more exploring, you can sort of see more things unfolding. So you can see here the Goron has arrived, been told there's no room at the inn for him, and he will be sleeping outside, which is pretty nasty work on our part, but it's also funny to me. I don't care what anyone says. In the remake of this on the 3DS, they actually changed it so you had to be a Goron, which I think kind of takes a bit away from it, because one of the fun things is that you find that key completely by accident. As you can see that we've actually not only booked ourselves into the Stockpot Inn, but we've also set up a meeting with Anju. Now here's the deal. If we didn't put this mask on and talk to her, we would not be able to have that meeting. Andrew will not come out of her bedroom, and the second day will play out as if nothing happened. If you do a bit of exploring in the inn, you'll come to this room at the end of the corridor here, and you'll see more characters inside here. Now, interacting with these people basically just gives you an insight into what's going on. But you can see that we're kind of being given breadcrumbs here. These people need help, and we can help them out if we choose to. What I also like is that in the final half an hour before the switch to another day-night phase, you get this bell ringing, because it really does kind of weigh down the fact that time is of the essence here. All of this world that we're exploring here is filled with people who, you know, are following the time. And you'll see that in a second when we switch to the night cycle here. Because now we are in the first night, and during the night things sort of change. For example, the Goron is now fully asleep. The performers have gone back inside to the Stockpot Inn. That also foreshadows that it's going to rain a lot tomorrow. But there's also the shops in Clocktown. The shops in Clocktown are particularly interesting because they serve their functions as they normally would in other Zelda games. So you've got the shooting gallery there, and then you've got the sort of more general kind of fun shop here with the romantic couple. The games that you're playing here are different every day and require different items. They are kind of sickly, so we're going to be leaving here. And it's not just the main characters that move around and sort of do their own little things. As you can see here, this gentleman was in the Stockpot Inn earlier on, and if we talk to him, you can get yourself a mask that will help you out in the game. But you can also see the performers here who are struggling. Again, if you find the right mask to help them out, you can... Well, she seems a bit angry at us there, which, you know, means I'm not going to help her here. But even just exploring around the town, each of the shops has their own little personalities. For example, coming in here during the daytime, you'll see a different shopkeeper who's pleasant and kind of very, very enthusiastic. But come here during the nighttime, and you get this shopkeeper who seems very, very irritated by the fact that you're here and not really bothered at all. But it's not just here. You can also go to the bomb shop, and if you talk to the shopkeeper, he'll actually kind of give you breadcrumbs for a sequence that you might be able to spot if you're in the right part of town. And then of course there's the curiosity shop. You won't be able to access this shop until the wee hours of the morning, because it's probably the dodgiest place in the entire town, believe it or not. In a town that feels as dark and as grim as Clocktown, you end up here and you just get that overwhelming sense of, you know, it's a bit grim here. But of course, if you hang around, you will see things play out in the town. And here you can see this old lady bringing a bag through the northern part of the town. Now, the thing is, if you speak to the man who owns the bomb shop, he'll kind of hint at this event happening. And as you saw earlier on, there was a dodgy man standing around the northern part of the town. And if you're here at this time exactly, you'll see this cutscene play out, where he actually mugs the old lady. Now, another thing that Majora's Mask does really well in these situations, you are given a choice here on what you can do. You can use your sword to slice the bag out of him and give it back to the old lady. You can use a bow and arrow to blow him up and then basically get no one is happy with the outcome. Or you can let him escape. And whatever you do here, the game will play out regardless of your choice. So there are different outcomes. As you can see, she's sad because it means you won't be able to buy the bigger bomb bag. And if we go back to the Stockpot Inn, you can see here that we are meeting up with Anju. Now, the thing here is, if we hadn't asked her to meet us here, she would not be here. And that's one of the things that Majora's Mask does really, really well. It's like the butterfly effect in video game form. You do something, you cause changes, and this is one of the situations that you have to actively work towards if you want to sort of experience this branching storyline. And the thing is, she's going to kind of give us an item here, this letter, and if we deliver this before the postman does his round the next day, we're actually able to push this story along further. But here's the thing, you don't have to do the good thing. If you really, really want to be that kind of person, there's a lovely hand in the toilet here that really, really needs a piece of paper for some reason. And if you want to really just mess around with Anju, yes, you can give this piece of paper that you've just gained to the hand in the toilet. And this kind of freedom you don't really get in too many video games. But the reason that this exists is because of that 3-day cycle. The 3-day cycle basically allows you to basically do whatever you want, and then all the damage that you do is undone, which gives this game an interesting frame of reference. Now, if we head back over to the milk bar, during the wee morning hours, you can actually see the leader of the troop that we saw earlier on, and he's just wallowing away in self-pity because he lost his gig. No matter what, we try to do here, he's just going to be depressed and down, and you can see that the events that we saw unfold, we have full context over why he feels this way. And we also find out that, he is the brother of several other characters in the game that we're not going to talk about in this video, but it does add context to his character. And once you kind of do the thing to make him happy, you kind of learn a lot more about this NPC. This random NPC that, in other games would just kind of teleport around. Here you get to sort of see a bit of his backstory. You get to understand his motives and why he's even bothering to do any of this in the first place. It's such rich world building, and even though it doesn't really add anything to the overall story, the fact is that it's happening in Clocktown here. You're allowed to see this play out completely in its full form, and it really just makes the game feel that much more richer for it. When you jump to the second day though, there's a completely different vibe in the town. Characters have moved around, they're doing different things, and depending on your actions in the first day, certain characters will be available and others will not. And again, the fact that it's raining like this, the fact that it's kind of gloomy and it feels a bit more kind of, not nice to be in the town, it kind of adds to the sense of dread that's building, because it feels like this is just not a very nice place to be in now, because it's getting a bit more chaotic. But the townsfolk keep doing what they're doing. The postman here, for example, is still doing his rounds, he's still delivering the mail, and it's important to kind of take note of this, because even though we all know that the moon is falling, and even though the townsfolk are becoming increasingly aware, there seems to be a sense of, doubt that it's even going to happen. But people are kind of aware of it, and it's that kind of interactivity, it's that kind of world building that I think really makes Clocktown just feel like a special place, because it feels like you're in a living, breathing environment. One example of this is Anju here. If you don't help her on the first day, she has no idea where her fiance is. She has no way of kind of furthering that storyline. And even though this doesn't need to be in the game, you get nothing for seeing this unfold. But the fact is that, you've interacted with these characters, you've experienced the story that they're building, and this is the result of your inaction to help, and it's playing out in this town. And Clocktown just has such a character to it, because all of these stories kind of intertwine, they intermingle, and it makes everything feel like it's just that much more rich because of it. And that's kind of the thing here. You get these little quiet character moments, like this, for example. She comes to sit by the laundry pool, and she's just here to cry. She's just here to sob at the fact that, her world's falling apart. And the game never instructs you to come and see this, but if you kind of get invested in these characters, if you sort of spend time trying to kind of understand what they're up to, these moments really add so much to the world of Termina. And no, you can't reunite them, even though they are literally stood right across the way from each other. And if you kind of go talking to the characters, like the old woman that we saw the night before getting mugged, she basically gets a lecture off her son, basically telling her, she's not going to be doing that again. But if you help her out, you don't get this discussion because it's not in this timeline. And the way that this game kind of handles its intertwining stories and the fact that your actions do have weight to them makes it feel like you're impacting the world directly. Another good example of this is if you go into the Stockpot Inn on the second day and you haven't helped Andrew out, she's not actually going to be here because obviously she's out moping, she's out having a good cry. But instead, it's her mum who's there. And again, it's the little details like this. It makes it feel like you are having real impacts in this world. There's so much layer and detail to this world, like this stolen moment, for example, where basically the mother here is basically saying they've got to leave town the next day and there's no way that they can stay any longer. And it's the little character moments like this that these NPCs, they become intertwined with the world, and Clocktown is the stage upon which all of this is playing out. If you're not here at the right time, you don't get to see this cutscene. And for me, that kind of thing really does kind of make it feel like investing time into the world and paying attention does help to sort of make this world feel deeper. And it's not just positive stolen moments. If you are around at the right time, if you just happen to be chilling out in one of the areas of the town, you'll see the continuation of the storyline. So that man that stole the old lady's bomb bag the night before, here he is cashing in that bomb bag the very next night. You even get to see him try to cash in the bomb bag and the store manager basically being a bit of an ass to him, telling him that, he knows exactly where this bomb bag came from and that, he's going to lowball him, which, again, there's no reason for any of this to exist within Clocktown, but it's here, and it's just world building. But then we get to the final day, and this is kind of where I feel all that world building and all those character interactions and all of the things that you've kind of grown to love in Clocktown really begin to fall down. Come into the general store during the day here, and you'll see that the shop owner that you've been kind of talking to during the daytimes isn't here anymore. It looks like he's already fled town. Talking to the NPCs around the town, you can feel the sense of panic, the urgency. People are saying that they are going to be leaving because they don't want to be crushed by the moon. And you really get that sense of urgency, not just from the characters, but from the music. I'm just going to let you listen to the music a tiny bit here because the music on the third day is so tense and it's so beautifully crafted that it really helps to create this very uneasy sense of being. And it's just interesting to see how some of these NPCs are reacting to what's going on. Because talk to this swordsman on the third day, and he gives this really strong impression that he's going to slice the moon. And yet, even with all of this going on, the postman here is still delivering the post, even though there's barely anyone in the town now to actually take receipt of it. And just interacting with the townsfolk, you get that palpable sense of terror and dread. And they're all very clearly telling you they will not be here when nighttime comes because they're all going to be, trying to get as far away as they can from the town. And then you get to the final 12 hours, and the town basically becomes a ghost town. A lot of the characters that you've been interactive with, they leave. They are gone. You can follow some of them to where they end up. For example, everyone in the Stockpot Inn basically heads over to the ranch, but the shops that you've been inhabiting, they empty out. The spaces become a lot more empty, and it really becomes sort of surreal. You're exploring this area that when you started out on day one felt so full of life. It was all full of good things, but here it's just empty and it feels very kind of sad. And it's just the small, quiet character moments here. It's the fact that the mayor here, if you don't sort of intervene, he just kind of sits here saying that the carnival will go ahead, even though the moon is literally hovering right above the building above him. And then you kind of head outside his office and you see these two guards here. They look defeated. They look completely, devastated at the fact that they aren't able to tell the comrades, to leave, to save themselves. And when you go and talk to the guards outside, you can feel the conflict. They want to leave, but they're honor bound to stay and defend the town. And it's also seeing characters that, you've bumped into many times, just fighting against the realization that they want to leave the town, but they feel honor bound and duty bound to stay, even though everything within them is screaming that they have to leave. And how many video games have this kind of existential dread dripping from every pore? Like, this isn't a common feature in many games. You don't get to see this kind of character building for just generic NPCs. It's going to the milk bar and seeing that the mayor's wife isn't fleeing the town. She's just here drinking her sorrows away as the time sort of whittles down. She kind of accepts her fate, and yeah, you can give her some good news, and yes, you can help the postman to leave by, playing through the Andrew storyline, but it is a genuine question. How many video games allow characters to just suffer through this kind of existential dread? And you can see there how big the moon has gotten as it kind of gets closer. And what I really love is that when the clock strikes midnight here, the atmosphere just completely falls away. The sense of impending doom, dread of everything that the townsfolk feared coming to fruition, and the music here is just so haunting. It's so sort of unique. It's very hard for me to kind of compare this sequence here to any other kind of video game, because just standing here in the town, you hear the bell tower ringing away in the distance, and as we kind of get closer to the 0 hour, the bells sort of ring out more and more, kind of in desperation. Like, it's so hard for me to kind of convey just how absolutely haunting all of this is. And if you return to the swordsman's school, you'll see this sign here. It says that the swordsman has gone on vacation. Don't look for him. But here's the thing, if you slash this sign at the back, you'll find him cowering away in this back room here. The swordsman that said he was going to slice the moon, screaming and cowering that he's scared, terrified that, this is the end of his life. Again, there was absolutely no reason to put this kind of detail in for NPCs that you only interact with once or twice in the game, but it's here, and if you pay attention to the game, if you allow yourself to explore Clock Town, these are the moments that enrich the entire experience, because you've lived out these last 3 days alongside these characters, and now you're watching them come to terms with their mortality, the fact that everything is about to end and that they are all completely powerless. I'm just going to let you listen to this music for a second here, because I think if you've never experienced this, you need to kind of understand just how haunting this music is. I have played thousands of video games over the years, all kinds of video games, and yet this moment, these final 6 hours, these have stuck with me so much over the years, and it's not even particularly scary, it's not particularly detailed, it's just everything about this moment, I think, really kind of helps to elevate Clocktown above a lot of similar locales in other games. Because yes, hub towns exist, and a lot of those hub towns, you go to, you'll do what you need to do, and then you don't really kind of feel an attachment. But standing here, watching the moon very slowly inch down, and yes, it is very slowly inching down over there, it really does kind of make you feel so sorry for all of these people. It's just excellent video game design, and I always find myself kind of coming back to this space. Even if I'm not really playing the game, I'll come here just to experience this, because for me, very few other video games have even come close to just capturing this aura in this moment. I can't tell you like how much I just come back to experience all this, and I feel that it's a combination of the branching storylines, the fact that the NPCs are allowed to have little organic growth, and the fact that there are branching storylines and everything you do feels like it has consequence, it has weight. The town is very kind of shabby, but you grow an attachment to the people here, and it's a bond that's unlike many other video game spaces, in my opinion, because the problem here is that while you get to go back in time, these people do not get to go back in time. For these people in this version of this town, this really is the end.